Good morning, everyone. Welcome to my presentation on cybersecurity in self-driving car technology following an attack on a car. What happens to trust? As we introduced, my name is Victoria. I'm a second-year Cardiff University PhD student. I do that full-time, and alongside that, I also work for a London-based consultancy firm in cybersecurity itself, so I bridge both academia and industry. So, what am I going to be talking about today? I'm going to be talking about self-driving cars in general, how they've come to be, what some of the challenges are that lie ahead, before focusing on where my project's at and what I'm currently researching. So, self-driving cars were once just a thing of imagination. And despite a few prior efforts, it wasn't really until the early 2000s when the significant surge to develop self-driving cars really took off, and the goal of achieving a fully autonomous vehicle became an actual reality. Now, the Society of Automotive Engineers has decided to define what is actually meant by a self-driving car, because there's so many words written about, but people don't really know what it is. On screen now is the definition that is currently in use, and this has been through many iterations. And as you can see, there are 6 levels, ranging from level 0, so fully manual cars that you and I and everyone else drive, right the way up to level 5, fully autonomous, which means the car can fully operate by itself without any human interaction. Most vehicles, like I say, are level 0 or level 1. However, we are beginning to see cars with level 2 capabilities, and even level 3, but level 3 are definitely not legal on UK roads yet. So, you may have seen the recent news headlines about Oxford. They've actually just started a self-driving car bus trial. You may have also seen that soon you'll be able to watch TV in your cars. Now, these are all really exciting prospects. However, they're very far from reality of fully autonomous level 5 self-driving cars. But this is part of the push to get more vehicles on the road and more people using this technology, where automation will really help drivers whilst they're on the road. However, whether or not we see a world operating with level 5 autonomous vehicles, only time will tell. Now, that might sound a bit pessimistic. We're going to play a short video. Unfortunately, the sound is only going to come out of my laptop, so it'll be really quiet. But this is a really interesting video about some of the challenges that are facing autonomous vehicles already.
A future is here, and it has everybody talking tonight. A video showing a self-driving car getting pulled over by police in San Francisco has gone viral on social media. NBC Bay Area Stephanie Magallon spoke with the man who took that video and has the story.
It looks like an ordinary traffic stop. The officer gets out to speak with the driver, but then
ain't nobody in it.
It turns into the scene of a futuristic movie.
Well, I was super surprised. I mean, one, because I haven't actually seen one of those cars actually drive autonomously.
He and others thought the cruise car was evading police after getting pulled over. Everyone, including police, were laughing.
But I think that they might have been embarrassed because a lot of people were looking at them at the time, or they just thought the whole situation was funny.
It turns
So, as the video is about to go on to say, it turns out this car was actually stopped and had lights on. So something really simple, just turning lights on when it's dark, it didn't have it on. So that's one challenge obviously we've got to overcome. The second challenge obviously here is that the communication that these self-driving cars are being tested on the road wasn't there. So there's a number of interesting challenges that are already arising from the development and deployment stage of self-driving cars. The police were blissfully unaware that this was going on. There's also some other challenges. For the rest of this talk, we're going to talk about cyber. So, as vehicles continue to become smarter, ensuring cybersecurity best practices is becoming an increasing concern, as I'm sure most of the room already know. Threat actors are evolving their techniques and are executing far more sophisticated attacks. And we are also beginning to see cyber attacks impacting the physical world. I know in a talk earlier this morning it was mentioned that there was an epilepsy gift that was put on an epilepsy site, and consequence from that. This is a similar example. It's an incident where an attack happened a few years ago in Germany, and a persistent ransomware infection. It crippled the systems of Dusseldorf University Hospital, and there was a need to redirect patients. Now, unfortunately, as a result of this redirection, one patient couldn't be saved in time. And actually, this attack was a mistake. The threat actors were actually trying to attack the university itself, rather than the associated clinic. However, since this incident, there have been other attacks aiming to disrupt everyday life. I think earlier, Paul mentioned the Florida the poisoning efforts to poison water supplies in Florida. So it happens. So what's all this got to do with cars? Well, you probably guessed it. Cyber attacks, like we've been discussing, have the potential to obviously impact cars as well. And this ultimately has the potential to diminish trust. So, across the automotive industry, the occurrence and reporting of cyber attacks is becoming more prominent. And whilst attacks have been reported, on it, for example, car key fobs, electric vehicle charging units, there hasn't been one yet to date where a life-threatening incident has happened. However, as cars become increasingly connected, let alone autonomous, the number of entry points is increasing. The attack surface is growing. So like I said, take for example electric cars. One of the biggest vulnerabilities and entry points is the amount of electrical charging points scattered across the country. A recent report said that they can not only commit DOS attacks, but they can also allow hackers to cause disruptions, steal energy, as well as driver information credentials. So cyber in the automotive industry, like many other industries, is very much an afterthought. It's compartmentalised and communication de facto standards are not yet fully established. However, by 2024, there is definitely standards emerging and there's going to become more of an obligation to integrate cybersecurity into the cars at the assembly stage. Now, this is slightly worrying because self-driving cars are already being developed. They're already being manufactured. And considering we're only just beginning to think about cybersecurity in this sort of depth, like I say, a bit of a concern. However, in addition to these types of cybersecurity standards, we are also beginning to see individual companies place demands on cybersecurity. So, for example, BMW, by 2024, they've announced that the vehicle suppliers are required to ensure that all driving control system units have no direct communication to any customer's internet-based devices. So, your phone, anything like that. So, where do I fit into this picture? Well, I'm looking at once an attack's happened, which projections forecast they inevitably will. What's happened to trust on an SDC, and who is to blame for the attack? So I'm currently focusing on the first bullet point. Now, cybersecurity attack, you probably think that's quite a bold term, and it's quite vague. So my project began with narrowing down what we mean by a cybersecurity attack. What nuances, what characteristics of an attack is most likely to affect trust in an SDC? So I've been drilling down into a few things. I'll talk a bit about experiment one in a moment, but severity, duration, and frequency were three potential factors that quite a lot of literature out there, quite obvious. Also attack, trust goes down more. So experiment one, I used the future thinking style methodology in which we presented participants with a series of randomly ordered hypothetical news headlines about potential self-driving cars and cyber incidences to imagine this world where it has happened. Now this was done just to manipulate whether the thought of, oh gosh, it's cyber, really impacts trust. It was a two-group design, and one group experienced headlines where cyber-specific terminology was used, so we called that overt, and another group experienced a condition where cyber-specific terminology was not used. And that was called covert. So what we found from this experiment in terms of trust and blame is that blame was very varied, very much dependent on the context across both conditions. However, overtly cyber condition, maybe because they've been probed with it, were far more likely to attribute the blame to the hackers and attackers, rather than, say, an individual or an employee. And there are also occurrences where joint blame happened. So people were blaming more than one entity, although it wasn't possible in the study to determine the weighting of such blame. With regards to trust, we found that a reported incident that had used cyber-specific terminology, it wasn't trusted any differently to an incident that hadn't used cyber-specific terminology. So that's actually quite an interesting finding, that cyber's not that big scary word that everyone thinks it is. So despite this, you might think, oh no significant findings. I was actually able to draw some really useful insights. So there were two headlines where we did get a significant finding. And that was the indication, as I mentioned earlier, that the more severe a cyber attack was more likely to impact trust, and also the nature of an attack. So if an attack was accidentally caused force as opposed to deliberately force, this again was more likely to affect your trust ratings. So, we're currently conducting some follow-on experiments to explore this and see what else we can draw out. And why is this important, you might be asking? Well, ultimately, humans are going to be interacting with this technology. They're going to be the ones using it. And if we don't have that trust in the technology, trying to roll this out is really going to be hard. Now, I'm also fortunate enough to work on a side project of this. I'm a research assistant on an ESRC JSP funded project, alongside my principal supervisor today, Phil Morgan. We're working on a project, this project, which is looking at legal liabilities in autonomous driving. Now, I'm mentioning this only because towards the end we went to Japan, towards the end of last year, and we got to meet our collaborators, and they're really interested in the developments in SEC cybersecurity. So we're also currently working towards exploring what happens to trust when a company's cyber readiness and cyber response is good or bad. On that note, I thank you all for listening, and welcome any questions.
Regarding security, your findings in security and privacy of these electric cars, what was your most concerning finding?
In terms of privacy?
Yes.
So, privacy, per se, I haven't quite delved down the roots on. So yeah, I don't really think I can give you a comprehensive answer to that question.
What about the security aspects then in that case?
Of autonomous vehicles themselves?
Yeah.
So we looked more at the human side of it and the human vulnerabilities as to what makes human vulnerable rather than the tech side of what the actual specifics are. Yes.
I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely fine.
No,
it's a problem. Maybe at lunch you can catch you.
Thank you, Victoria.